Let's talk some descendants. When Beast and Belle married, instead of going on a honeymoon, they decided to combine the kingdoms together to create the United States of Auradon. Not only that, but they also banished all of Disney's most famous villains to the Isle of the Lost to be trapped under a protective barrier. I mean, it makes sense why they got locked up. They were villains, but why are Maleficent, the Evil Queen, Jafar, Ursula, and many more Disney villains trapped on the Isle if they were supposed to be dead? They died in their original stories, but somehow they are still in Descendants having children. And while I'm asking questions about Descendants, why do people in Auradon decide to use technology over magic?
This spellbook. It belongs in the museum along with my mirror.
There are so many questions left undone in Descendants, and today we're gonna get to the bottom of 2. Hello, I'm Isaac from Watso Videos, where we discuss fun topics for fun people, and today I'm gonna break down 2 of my biggest questions in Descendants. Part 1, how are dead villains on the Isle of the Lost? Some of you may be scoffing at me saying, huh, I already know the answer, it's so obvious. But the reason I'm including this in a video is because this is a really common question I've been asked all the time in the comment section. For die-hard Descendants fans, or those of you who read Isle of the Lost, I'm sure you may already be saying that you already know the answer, and I'm sure a lot of you do. So if you'd like to see my explanation on why technology replaces magic, I'll leave a timestamp to that below. Watching the Descendants movies and suddenly seeing Maleficent having children and other villain parents having children who were supposedly supposed to have died in their original stories doesn't make sense, especially if you only have a background in Disney animation or understanding the Disney villains. For new fans of Descendants, this seems like a huge plot hole, but there is an explanation for this. Here's the short answer. The fairy godmother brought them back to life. In the newly formed United States of Auradon, Belle and the Beast's primary goal was to bring stability and justice to the land. This is why they unified the kingdoms under one rule and banished all of the villains to the Isle of the Lost. But they felt that only imprisoning living villains was not enough justice to negate the evil acts that so many villains had done during their lives. To gain support from their people and make sure that the villains paid for their heinous crimes, the king and queen commissioned the help of the fairy godmother for a very interesting task. The novel Isle of the Lost explains, some of the villains were brought back from death, only to be placed on this island. Now, you may be thinking, what's the big deal? How would being alive again be such a terrible fate, especially when a bunch of them are having children? I know I had that thought, but the Isle of the Lost attempts to explain this. See, for the villains, being on the Isle was a fate worse than death. The story states, without their awesome powers to dominate and hypnotize, terrorize and threaten, create thunderclouds and lightning storms, transform and disguise their features, or lie and manipulate their way into getting exactly what they wanted, ecking a living, selling and eating slop, scaring no one but their own minions, and stealing from each other. It was hard even for them to imagine they once had been great and powerful. Now their lives were anything but powerful. Now they were ordinary. Every day, dare it be said, dull. End quote. They were living their worst nightmares, if villains have nightmares. Their lives may have been revived, but their meaning for existence was eradicated with the loss of magic and power. Part 2. Why are Auradon's kids forced to use technology over magic? Another idea Belle and Beast implemented once they came into power was to remove the use of magic in Auradon. Instead, they hope to create infrastructure to be able to promote technology like computers, 3D printers, and video games. But why did the Kingdom of Auradon go along with this? If I had magic, I'd be doing that stuff all the time. If you can't tell, this is my replacement for a wand. I don't currently own a wand. Life in Auradon radically changed when Belle and Beast decided that magic would widely be retired. The reasoning behind this declaration was the belief the next generation should rely on their own talents instead of magic. To enact this royal decree, they reach out to Fairy Godmother again to have her oversee the use of magic in Auradon. Her first task was to collect many of the powerful items that were known in Auradon to be put into the Museum of Cultural History. Although in Descendants, it seems most citizens in Auradon were fine with giving up their magic, there were actually some who didn't want to. Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather wanted their magic back since they had trouble performing mundane tasks on their own. And in one case, there was a whole city that rejected this notion of giving up magic. Camelot Heights did not accept technological advancements into their kingdom. King Arthur was the reason for this, and although he never explains why he doesn't want modern living conditions, this is the choice he decides to make. Arthur's kingdom remains to live as if they were in the Middle Ages. To make sure that the next generation would not use magic, they decided to teach them classes in Auradon Prep to prepare them for a life without it. For example, at Auradon Prep, Merryweather began to teach life skills without magic, and there were subjects that we are more familiar with, like chemistry taught by Mr. DeLay. There were a few instances where magic was allowed, like in Auradon Council meetings. As king, Ben had an advisory council made up of a variety of Disney sidekicks like Flounder, Ariel's sisters, the seven dwarves, Genie, Pongo, and Perdita, and the mice, Mary, Jacques, and Gus. To allow the animals to speak to humans, magical communicators were implemented, but other than that, there weren't a lot of other socially accepted situations to use magic. Most of the time, magic began to be seen as the easy way out. Like when Evie gets answers for chemistry using her magic mirror, and when Mal uses her spellbook to feign a princess persona. Although the removal of magic allows bright minds like Carlos to rise above the rest when magic isn't a factor, a lot of these cases of taking the easy way out seem like they could also be solved using a Google search, so I don't necessarily see why removing magic is that big a deal. I can understand why Ben would get frustrated when Mal claimed she created this giant elaborate meal for days on end when it only took her a few seconds with magic, but if she was just open about using magic from the beginning, I don't understand what the big deal would be. Regardless, by the end of Descendants, all of the villain kids, including Mal, give up their magical possessions. Dead villains rose on the Isle of the Lost because the fairy godmother revived them to suffer a fate worse than death. While the villains suffer without magic, Auradon citizens also give up their magic to create a more technological society, and to ensure people can rely on their own gifts instead of relying on magic. Descendants is a fun film series with great songs, and although there may be parts that seem unthought out, the deeper you look, the deeper the story becomes. So now it's time for the question of the day, sponsored by my patrons. Would you rather have technology or magic? I think my answer is pretty clear. I would probably choose magic, but I would not want to give up YouTube. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section, along with any other ideas you have for future Discovering Disney episodes. With Halloween coming up, I have created and am planning at least one more spooky video. The idea behind this spooky video was because there were dead people that were coming back to life. It probably was a weak connection to Halloween, but there's still some theories that are developing in my head. So if you'd like to stay up to date with those theories that are going around in my head and more magical videos, then remember to subscribe and follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Links in the description. To see more Watso videos, then check out some awesome pics over there. And as always, thanks for watching and have a magical day.